Can you describe the moment when you discovered that the series won the Pulitzer Prize?
I was in Namibia covering the Civil War there. Namibia's right next door. Now it's called Southwest. I mean, it was Southwest Africa then. It's Namibia now. And I was in a little old German colonial town on the coast at night and had been out covering the fighting during the day and had come to the hotel that night and got a call from my editor telling me that they had just found out that I'd won. It was going to be announced the next day. So it was amazing. I went down to the bar and ordered a beer and told the bartender I just won the Pulitzer, and he said he didn't know what it was, but he said congratulations, and he bought me a beer anyway.
Very cool. Has it been hard writing pieces after that? Now it's such a high bar.
I never thought of it that way, but probably if I'd thought of it, yeah, it would have been hard. But no, I just kept writing. I mean, I was right in the middle of the Civil War there, so I just kept writing. I didn't come back home for the ceremony they had at the paper and the celebration because I wanted to stay there and cover the war.
And that leads me now to the Los Angeles Times.
Mm-hmm.
So you work as a typical foreign correspondent.
Right.
When you go abroad, about how long are you there?
For the LA Times, I usually go for several weeks, 5-6 weeks, something like that. It depends. For the invasion of Iraq, I went for much longer because that was open-ended. Nobody knew how long the invasion would last. So that was about 2.5, 3 months, I think. Other times it's more like 5 to 6 weeks, depending on where I go. Like I went to Libya 3 times, and it was about 5 weeks each time. When I go to Afghanistan, it's usually 5 or 6 weeks. I went to Iraq last December, and that was about a month. So it depends. But after a while, you just get so burned out, you have to come back. Plus, I'm not assigned there, and we have overseas people who are assigned there. So I can work sort of around that.
What is the typical procedure when you get to the location?
When I was going to Libya, there was no procedure because, I mean, the government had collapsed, but particularly in the east where I was covering, because we had another reporter in Tripoli. I was in Benghazi in the east. I mean, to get there, you had to go land. The airport was closed, so I had to go from Egypt across land and basically hitchhike, catch rides with people at the border. The border had been thrown open because the government had collapsed. So there were just rebels at the border, but there was no official, to stamp your passport or anything like that. And you would have to catch rides and get to Benghazi. And then in Benghazi, I went through several interpreters, but finally found a young guy who spoke really good English. And I asked him how he learned it, and he said Pizza Hut. His parents had sent him to London to learn English, and he worked for Pizza Hut delivering pizzas, and said that's how he really learned how to speak English. And it was really good, and he was a young guy in his 20s, and we really hit it off. He used his mother's car to go to the front every day, and so I just paid the family to use the car, and he would take the car, and we'd go down to the front every day, back and forth. This is when the Gaddafi government was fighting the rebels, and they were going up and down this desert highway on the ocean, going back and forth, and it was a stalemate for several weeks. So it was something we had to cover what was happening every day.
And when you're on these trips, what kind of equipment do you bring with you?
Satellite phone, because there are no communications there. A cell phone, which doesn't work most of the time. You buy a local cell phone, which works better, and it's much cheaper. Laptop. Camping gear, because you're usually sleeping out somewhere, bring a sleeping bag. I bring sort of dried food or MREs that I can get from the military from other assignments. The MREs, the meals ready to eat, which are nice because they come in a bag and you can heat them up. They have a little heater element, and they have lots of calories, so you can survive off that.
What kind of food is it?
It's meals ready to eat. It's military food. It's what the soldiers eat when they're out on patrols. It's like dried camping food. But they have a heating element that's activated by water. You heat it up, it's nice and hot, and it's like tons of calories. I mean, it's basically for energy. Because in places like Libya, there's no place to eat. I mean, there's no food. You're out in the desert in the middle of a war. There's no place to stop for a restaurant. So you have to bring all your own food and water with you. But I mean, we could get that in Benghazi, and we took it with us. But you just have to plan ahead because in these situations, things are in upheaval, and the usual services that are there aren't there, like electricity and water and that kind of thing. So you're basically roughing it for the duration, and you don't know how long you'll be there or where you're going. So it's hard to plan. You take what you think you need, and the rest you try to get wherever you are.
What are the main challenges you've experienced when reporting abroad?
logistics, getting to where you need to go, dealing either with a government that doesn't want you there or with a military that doesn't want you there or wants to steer you towards certain stories, or you're dealing with a rebel group that wants to steer you away from some things and towards others. Just fighting your way to get to where you need to be physically. And then transportation, like roads and bridges get blown out and you have to find other ways to get around. Vehicles are sometimes in short supply. You have to get vehicles. Gas is always short every time. You know, if there's a revolution, a war, you know, the gas supplies get cut off and it's very difficult to find fuel to get to where you're going. So you end up getting big containers and filling them up to gas when you can and having them in the back of your vehicle, which generally makes you nauseous all day long because the fumes just overwhelm you. So it's just a lot of logistical problems. The one problem that I haven't found is getting people to talk to you. I mean, these situations, people want their story told, whether it's the government side, the rebel side, ordinary people. People want their story told, particularly if you're the international press and especially if you're the American press. People want the story out. So that's never been a problem, but getting to the story is a big problem.
How do you overcome the language barrier?
I wish I spoke Arabic. That's my one regret from when I was in college, that I didn't really learn a foreign language, and particularly Arabic would have been fabulous because I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I always have to find an interpreter, and I usually go through a couple before I get one that's really good. What I need is not only someone who speaks good English and can translate literally, because a lot of times they want to summarize and tell you what the person said, and I say, no, I want literally word for word what did the person say. And that's hard enough to sort of train somebody to do that, because usually people I get are not trained interpreters, they're just people who speak English. Secondly, I need someone who thinks like a journalist, who knows what questions I want, who understand just innately what I'm looking for. And I've had several who are really good, who became really good journalists just through practice, and they picked it up really quick. People who know how to probe, because you're doing an interview and I can ask the question, sometimes it doesn't get across, but if I have a good interpreter, they'll pick up on what I'm trying to get at and they'll ask the follow-up question, or a question in a different way to get the person to answer the kind of, to provide the information that I'm asking for. So I've had several good ones.
How do you deal with an interpreter? I mean, have you dealt with an interpreter that you don't trust?
I've never had one that I didn't trust, but I've had some that just really couldn't perform to the level that I needed. Not of any fault of their own, they just weren't capable. Either English wasn't quite good enough. There were times that the English turned out to be not as good as I thought it was, but more importantly, they didn't know how to ask the question and how to elicit information and try to get what I want, or they couldn't think journalistically. So there were problems, but the ones I found turned out to be I've had some really, really good ones. This guy, Mohammed, the guy in Libya, was fantastic. He was really good, and he was 25, 26, but he was college educated, and he'd been overseas, and he immediately grasped what we were after and would really push. He was very good at pushing various officials who said, oh no, you can't do that, or you can't go there, or you need a permission, and he was really good at just persuading them, you know, to drop their rules or drop whatever barrier was in front of us.